had a medical emergency on a flight and they made that call, is there a doctor on board? And I was faced with the moment like, okay, do I volunteer? Do I just stay quiet? I don't know what to do, but I volunteered. And it turned out that a young gentleman was going into anaphylactic shock. His throat was closing up due to an allergy. And I wasn't worried. I said, where's your EpiPen? And he said, I don't have one. I didn't even know I had this allergy. So I asked the pilot, can we land? Pilot says, well, it's an hour and a half back to Canada and an hour to Portugal. So that's not enough time. His throat's closing. He's going to die in 5 minutes. So I'm like, what can I do? So I opened the plane's emergency kit thinking there's going to be some epinephrine in there or an EpiPen, and there's no EpiPen. And I'm like, okay, what do I do now? There's no internet when you're over the Atlantic Ocean, so there's nothing to Google. But I'm finding that there is epinephrine, which is the same medicine that is found in an EpiPen, in a different formulation, in a different dosage for a cardiac arrest. So when someone's heart stops, we also give the same medicine. So it's a much thicker needle, not those cute little EpiPen needles that just go into the side of your thigh. And I said, okay, well, I need to do some rough calculations here and just guesstimate here because otherwise he's going to lose his life. And right there in the first class cabin, we take off his pants, we inject him with this huge needle. He's screaming. There's like a little bit of blood coming out. I inject the medicine. I'm praying that it's working. I stayed with him for 8 hours for the rest of that flight until we landed. We didn't need to divert. I checked his blood pressure and pulse every 15 to 30 minutes, and we saved his life. You think that would be the end of it. But I went and told that story on YouTube. Got almost 10 million views, if not more now. I don't know what it's at. And the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, calls from his office, or his office calls and says, hey, I'd like to get EpiPens on planes. Can you stand with us and tell us your story to the media? Yes. We tell the story. We call on the FAA to make these changes. And now 70% of planes have EpiPens on board, where that will never have to happen again.
The best advice I give people is your 20s are the best years of your life. You're young. You probably look pretty good. You're healthy. You've got all these things going on for you. I want you to have some fun, and I want you to have adventures. I don't want you to be 22 and go and get a job at Goldman Sachs for the rest of your life. So you need fun, you need adventure, you need some looseness, but it has to have some direction to it. It can't just be, I'm going to write poetry, I'm going to do rock and roll, I'm going to go and learn chemistry. No connection at all between all of these things. Just trying everything for the sake of novelty. That's a recipe for not being successful, because what you want to happen is you're 30 years old now. You've let your 20s are behind you. I'm not so young anymore, okay? You know, I'm getting older. I've had my fun. I've had adventure. I'm ready for something serious, and I've learned some real skills in life. You didn't just go try 80 different things. You kind of had 4 or 5 that you did. All right, now I know what I love. Now I can go down that path.
So if you're going into a business meeting or you're dealing with people who look to you as their supervisor, a little bit of a different Stephen. So they feel, it's not what you say to people, Stephen, it's how they feel around you. And if they feel like he's not taking any of this, they're gonna know it. It's the essence of who we are. It's our ethos, is a Greek word. Your way of being. We show people in the context of whatever environment we're in, the version that we want them to see so that we can get the results that we want.
I started a business at 16 called Bows Unlimited. When I was at school, I sold hair bows. And then I started a business at 53. So it's like, there's no other way to put it that age is a number. It is just a fucking number. And you can either mention that number endlessly, or you can look at what energy do you have at that moment in time to execute on your dream. That's all you need.
Energy.
All you need. Well, you need a lot. You need energy, passion, drive, relentlessness, perseverance, resilience. Pick yourself up and just get fucking on with it. You need all of those things. But you need the energy so that you jump out of bed in the morning and you are on it.
I did a prenup last week for a guy who went through one of the ugliest divorces I've ever seen. And that's not hyperbole. Like, I've been doing this for 25 years just to say, so for me to say the ugliest divorce I've ever seen, that's amazing. That's like a Michelin chef saying this was the best meal I've ever had. So this guy had a horrific divorce that lasted 4 or 5 years. He's remarrying a woman 30 years younger than him who he met 4 months ago. And when I said to him, as artfully and tactfully as I could, you know, you've only known this person for a short time. Have you thought about maybe just, you know, being a little cautious in terms of you've seen how difficult a divorce can be? Do you think maybe it might be? He goes, oh no, I've never felt anything like this. I've never been this in love. I've never been so connected with someone. We just get each other. It would be very indelicate and rude for me to say, like, snap out of it, man. You got to get your, like, really, bring your logical brain to this equation.
I grew up thinking that naps didn't work. I thought, what's the point taking a 15-20 minute nap if I'm not going to get into deep or REM sleep?
So there's benefit of just that 15-minute nap you mentioned. You want to stay in lighter stages of sleep because there's benefits of lighter stages of sleep. And that can give you that alertness and performance boost even when you're in lighter stages of sleep. You actually don't want to go into deeper stages of sleep because when you take the longer naps, as I think you might have shared, you've taken the 2-hour nap, the 3-hour power nap, you wake up and you're much more sluggish, much more groggy. That's not a good state for you to go out and then do work after that, or it's not the state that you want to be if you're a basketball player and have to go and play a game. But those deeper stages, you come out of what we call sleep inertia with that sluggishness. And so it can also affect your sleep at night and make it harder to sleep subsequently. So you actually want to stay in those lighter stages of sleep and keep those naps very short.
I feel like school just starts way too early for kids.
It's an ongoing problem, and actually in a very interesting way, there has been a change to school start times, particularly in California. This year was the first year that start times for high schools and for middle schools was shifted much later because there are studies to show that when our students are better rested, they have higher attendance rates, their GPA and grades are much higher, there's less mental health issues, there's less car accidents. And so what makes it challenging is that at the age of high school, many of those body clocks are shifted. And so students want to, in adolescence, go to bed later and wake up later, naturally. That's just how our sleep changes through the life cycle. But when they stay up late and then we cut their sleep short by forcing them to get up really early for school, now they have insufficient sleep and that builds like a sleep debt. And so they're not setting themselves up for success in school for learning and memory. So that's where, again, there's more evidence of if we can shift the school start time, get these students to have a little bit more sleep.
Is there such a thing as too much exercise?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. About 11% of elite athletes, by the time they reach 50, will have scans that show very severe blockages or a heart disease. I have some of these people coming to me who don't know why they've got diagnosed with heart disease. And I remember one lady I saw a few months ago, and she was running something crazy like 5 to 10 miles a day, but on only 4 hours sleep. And otherwise didn't have a diabetes or anything else, but had heart disease, had developed heart disease. And I said, this is probably because of this. When you look at heart disease and optimal levels of exercise, it is actually the one thing I think the guidelines are right about is probably that 150 minutes of moderate activity a week. So I follow my own advice. I used to run, but running can be quite damaging to the knees, especially as you get older. So I cycle and do exercise bike and whatever else. And I will get my heart rate to about 115 beats a minute for 30 minutes, 5 times a week. If you look at the communities around the world known as the blue zones, where people have high longevity, these people weren't pounding it in the gym. They're just outside, they were gardening, they were moving. You don't need to be doing all of that kind of stuff.
When you've been disrespected, how do you deal with that?
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it back. What have you done to let people think that they can do that to you? That's the first thing I'm going to say. What standards have you created or what things have you set up to let people think I don't have to deliver on time? I can't be disrespectful. I can't show up late for work. That's the first thing I'm going to say.
So I would hazard a guess that I, in the past, set a standard for this.
Right. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Is there something I have done to create an environment where a person thinks that it is okay to do these things? That's first.
Why do you go to I?
Because I'm the one who sets the tone. I just interviewed a former chief of station, John Franchi. He's former CIA. And he managed a lot of people, a lot of strong personalities, because you got officers and all these different people. And he said to me, you know what I learned? He said, it is easier to have boundaries and be a little bit more sturdy and more authoritative in the beginning and then pull back than to be everybody's friend and then try to put those boundaries in place. The latter doesn't work.
We're going to brainstorm and try and come up with an idea for whatever it is. And he goes, but first, some ground rules for the brainstorming. Rule number 1, there is no such thing as a bad idea. And I call bullshit. There's plenty of bad ideas. In fact, there's no such thing as a good idea. Every idea is bad. We just don't know why they're bad yet. And so the framework I approach, I assume all these ideas are ridiculous. I assume none of them are going to work. But here's the difference. The reason I start from that position, I don't want to commit the single worst thing you can do as an entrepreneur, which is fall in love with your idea. And they go, this is a great idea. And they tell their partner, and their partner goes, oh, that's brilliant. I'd buy that. And so they go, okay. And they begin working on a business plan. And they write this 10-page business plan. And they're dreaming about how amazing it's going to be. Just think about when we have this line of, they've built this incredibly ornate business in their head all based on this feeling that this must be a good idea. You've got to nip that in the bud.
How do you know when to drop an idea, and how do you know when to commit to an idea? What was the framework you're using?
The framework is that every idea is stupid. You know, listen, you probably haven't had a corporate job yet in your
No, thank God.
Yes, thank God is right. Because there's this thing in corporate, I would say corporate America, but corporate world, and it's the brainstorming session. And they put everyone in a conference room and they go, we're going to brainstorm and try and come up with an idea for whatever it is. And he goes, but first, some ground rules for the brainstorming. Rule number 1, there is no such thing as a bad idea. And I call bullshit. There's plenty of bad ideas. In fact, there's no such thing as a good idea. Every idea is bad. We just don't know why they're bad yet. And so the framework I approach, I assume all these ideas are ridiculous. I assume none of them are going to work. But here's the difference. The reason I start from that position, I don't want to commit the single worst thing you can do as an entrepreneur, which is fall in love with your idea. And they go, this is a great idea. And they tell their partner, and their partner goes, oh, that's brilliant. I'd buy that. And so they go, okay. And they begin working on a business plan. And they write this 10-page business plan. And they're dreaming about how amazing it's going to be. Just think about when we have this line of, they've built this incredibly ornate business in their head, all based on this feeling that this must be a good idea. You've got to nip that in the bud. And the way you nip it in the bud is you try, rather than dreaming how amazing this idea is, the only thing you think about is how can I quickly, cheaply, and easily collide this idea with a real person and find out, is it in fact a good idea or a bad idea? That's such a critical step. That's the framework that everyone has to have. Having ideas is easy and trivial. The important thing is how clever can you be to come up with a quick and cheap and easy way to test it.